Hello, fellow followers, and welcome to FanZcene. Today I will be talking with Mr. Andrew Hawkins here about In Search of Darkness Part 2, the sequel documentary to In Search of Darkness, and some of our favorite 80s horror. Welcome, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Greg. This is great. Great to be
Yeah,
back.
it's going to, I'm really looking forward to this upcoming documentary, and tell the people a little bit about how this sequel came about.
Yeah, so we wanted to continue the discussion that we started with In Search of Darkness, and it's all about the celebration and the fun that we have revisiting the movies that we love the most from the 80s horror era. And that's the entire motive is, we listened to everyone who said, "Oh, I wish you guys had talked about this favorite movie of mine," or "I wish you'd talked more about this one." And that's what we've done is we've brought in new people. We've brought in some of our old friends and favorites from the first one, and we're just keeping the conversation going and further developing to even dig deeper and check out movies that we really wanted to highlight and we wanted to get people to talk about, get perspective on, tell some stories, and that's the whole thing. We're just having fun.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's anything like the first one, which I had a great time watching, and you could tell the people, the actors and the directors, they had a great time in that. You could really tell. You could see it in their faces. I mean, Tom Atkins is one of my all-time favorites, and
Oh yeah,
I
one of the
absolutely,
best.
yeah, I absolutely loved his segments in the first one, and he will be returning for the second one, right? You guys still got more of him.
Yeah, we've got more of his interview that we're going to be featuring, and we love the fact that he's a member of the In Search of Darkness family alongside so many others and some new faces too. So it's really exciting, and we're like just ready to bring this to everybody who's ready for it. It's really great.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell us some of the new faces that you got coming into this documentary.
Yeah, of course. Oh man, we've got probably one of the most iconic people from 80s horror coming in and talking about his role as Freddy Krueger. We've got Robert Englund. And just to have him
All time
on
great.
to talk about some of his films and then talk about some of the films that he loves, we had an incredible time chatting with him. And he's brought some amazing stuff to the table that we can't wait for people to see. I mean, some incredible things about what was going through his head and what he was doing during Freddy's Revenge, and then talking about his history as an actor and his career and what he's done throughout his years in front of the camera, and then about some of his favorite genres. Like he gets into it, talking about Italian horror, talking about deep cuts, and a ton of stuff. So he's for sure, someone that I absolutely have to say we were totally honored to be able to talk with and include in part two. But there are so many more as well. We've got Tom Savini, the legendary effects creator. We've
Love Tom
got
Savini.
Linnea Quigley. We've got Bill Moseley. We've got Shinya Tsukamoto, the director of Tetsuo the Iron Man, one of the most intense cult classics of all time. We've got Gioretta, star of Lamberto Bava's Demons.
I
And
actually,
it's so cool.
yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I
No,
actually
no,
just
go for it.
watched. I just watched Demons 2 days ago because of
Yeah.
that. Because I had seen that you guys interviewed her. I had never seen it, and I love that movie. That movie was crazy. It was like to the wall, insane. It was great. And the demon with the glowing eyes. That scene when they come up the steps. Oh man,
Yeah.
that was a great shot scene.
Yeah, that's such a fun movie. I mean, that's always
Yeah,
been one of my favorites. I think the first time I ever watched it was maybe because of Joe Bob Briggs on Monster Vision back in
yeah.
the day. And that's a movie that we had such an amazing time being able to have Jaretta come on for a watch party for our 80s horror doc Discord and our community, but also then talk to her and sit down with her and get her insights and get her memories and her history and everything that she wanted to talk about making that movie, because she has some amazing stories to tell, and she's so full of energy and so full of life and so much fun to talk with and have included. I mean, it's awesome. But
And
Demons is classic crazy 80s horror. I mean, that movie is so
yeah,
much fun.
it was. It was truly like when I watched it, I was like, how have I never seen this one before? Because it had like Evil Dead vibes to it, which I absolutely
Yeah.
love the Evil Dead series. And I really think that the Night of the Demons movie might have been a little bit inspired by that. Was it?
Yeah, I would say that it's its own thing, but it definitely goes along in the same sort of vein as Evil Dead.
Yeah.
You know, you've got an incredible possession story. You've got just this great cast of characters that get picked off one by one and then get possessed and become a threat. Like Night of the Demons, you know, talking about Linnea Quigley and that, she's amazing. But so is the rest of the cast. And that film is
Yes.
just a blast to watch. That's
Yes.
totally a Halloween classic, like 100%.
Angela is amazing. Oh man, one of my favorite lines in that movie is when Linnea Quigley looks at the two cashier guys. He's like, "Do you guys have sour balls?"
Sour balls.
He's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, you probably don't get a lot of blowjobs."
And you know, that's the thing too, is like we give Linnea the platform to be able to talk about cracking those jokes in the movie, talk about her history as like a scream queen and an icon. And we also have Steven there talk about his role as the effects creator for that. There are just, you know, so many moments where Steve Johnson and Linnea are really getting into it about that film. And it's great. It's just so fun and so entertaining to watch. I think I might have lost you for a second there.
Sorry, yeah, it was like something. I clicked something and boom, I disappeared. I don't know what happened there.
No worries.
Sorry about that.
No, not at all. But
Continue.
what I was saying was, yeah, Linnea and Steve Johnson are just awesome to hear talking about, you know, what they did, their whole career throughout the 80s, everything about Night of the Demons. I mean, Linnea talking about sorority babes in the slime ball bolorama, talking about, you know, her whole history. It's just, yeah, it's so cool to see her reflect on what her spot was in 80s horror, because she had a really unique position and a ton of fans absolutely love her. So it was great to have her included and chat with her.
Exactly. Yeah, she is so great. I first saw her in, I believe, in Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah,
and,
trash.
That movie. Yeah, the movie is a classic. And
her role in that is so awesome. Like, she's one of the most badass people in the entire cast.
Definitely.
It sucks that she gets taken out so early, but she comes back as the zombie version of trash and is just awesome. Like a total standout, you know? Yes, so great.
It's, you know, you remember her from the film. You definitely remember her. It's just, it's just so good. Like, these movies are just so good. And one of the things I really liked about the first one, which I'm definitely know I'm going to get in the second one, is finding new horror movies from the 80s that I had never seen before.
Yeah. It's great to be in a spot where we can talk to the people who worked on these movies and highlight them and do these recaps and these retrospectives and, you know, bring them all together in one mega documentary marathon length film. And people walk away with a list of films that they look through and they say, oh man, I cannot wait to check these out. Like ones they've never heard of before, ones that they've only heard of from friends or word of mouth or seen posts about, you know. So being able to have directors and celebrities and effects creators and reviewers come in and talk about movies like this, you know, that's a huge thing that we love being able to present to the audience and the fans, like just getting everybody involved and everybody having fun.
Definitely. That's one of the reasons why I absolutely love what you guys do, because it is for the fans, by the fans.
That's it.
You know, and I love that. I love that because there's so much in there for everybody within these documentaries that I mean, I wouldn't say you please everybody, but you guys please pretty much everybody, everybody of every type of fans of all levels, you know?
You know, that's the thing about what we're dealing with, the community aspect of everyone who gets a copy of the documentary. You get access to our Discord, to our 80s horror community, where we do watch parties every other week with people who were part of this era and people who've written about these movies and people who have, you know, a lot of perspective and things to say and stuff like that. Even if someone comes in and they're not familiar with a film and they're watching it for the first time, we get together and we watch it all together. We're all talking to each other. We're all sharing trivia and just, celebrating all that. And that's the whole thing is, we all just want to enjoy it. We want to watch good movies from the 80s and have a good time. That's totally it.
I mean, you can't beat a good movie from the 80s, man. You
Yeah.
just sit back, pop one in. It's so great. It's so good.
I'll tell you, this decade, I mean, it's some of the most entertaining movies that I love watching. And, there's some in the 90s too. There's some from every decade. But being able to celebrate this era, it was so unique and so singular. And you look back and so many of these movies are just a total wild ride.
They are. Yeah. I mean, the creativity and the practical effects and the stories, I love they're like timeless, and you can literally rewatch and rewatch. They never feel dated to me, even though nowadays you think, oh well, if you had a cell phone you could have got out, but don't worry about that. You're watching a movie. That's what the whole point of watching a movie, take you out of everything. And just the rewatchability of these films are just one of the reasons why I love them so much.
Yeah, well, talking about effects, I mean, we've got Tom Savini talking about his career. And for a watch party recently, we had Laurie Cardill, who came in and talked about Day of the Dead, working for George Romero, making the film, going through the entire process of shooting so much of it underground in one of the mines in Pennsylvania, and all of this, history and memories that she has. And it's so cool to reflect back on that, because that was where like Greg Nicotero and the KMB guys kind of got their real big break before they just, propelled into crazy 90s movies and all of these legendary effects films that, they're still doing even now.
Yeah.
And talking about how these effects were made, how they were executed, like how it all played out and what it was like to be on set. Like one of the craziest stories has to do with Joe Pilato, who was Captain Rhodes, and he's torn in half at the end of the film in the hallway, screaming, "Choke on him." And it's the best thing ever. But the thing is there's a great story behind that a lot of people know, but we're still giving Tom Savini the floor to talk about it, how when they pulled off that effect, all of the guts were real and they'd gone rotten in the fridge that they were stored in over the weekend before they shot the scene, because someone just happened to unplug it trying to save some energy or some power down there. And it's stuff like that we love being able to capture, because these stories, we want to preserve them and we want to make them so everyone can go back and revisit them and have a good laugh, or, learn something if they want to make their own effects movies.
Yeah. And that's what I love, it because it's not just like the actors or the directors. You're talking to like the people that put a lot of effort into this, like the special effects people, Tom Savini and all them. And I love hearing those stories, because like I knew that story about the Day of the Dead there.
The guts in the fridge.
The guts, I knew that. And it's just to
Such
hear
a great
Tom,
one.
Yeah, it is. And to hear Tom Savini be able to tell that story and to be able to go back and watch that, that's just something like I really look forward to seeing. Because the man's a genius.
He's one of those guys who revolutionized the entire industry. I mean, he talks about it, even in the trailer, we've got a clip in there of him saying he was considered the Wizard of Gore. He was this figure who redefined what we could see in horror movies with, George Romero and Maniac and all the work that he did, even on Friday the 13th. Yeah. I mean, that legendary status is something that we're all here to, celebrate and praise and learn from, because who better to hear talk about these films than the people who are actually there doing it and making it happen and creating them, so we can find out, what was going on, what their thinking was, how they did it. Those are, stories that I love hearing.
Yeah.
Like that's my favorite stuff. And that's totally, something I'm all about just as a fan, but being able to bring that to people, we love doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And, we love hearing it as fans. Like you said, we absolutely love hearing it. And to see, that I like to see that all these people are passionate about what they did and how they still enjoy what they did and how they can talk about it. And you can see like the smiles on their face as they're telling the stories and how they relive it. And that's just so good to see, in a documentary. Because if I'm honest, the In Search of Darkness was like probably one of my all-time favorite documentaries I've ever seen.
No, thank you, man. That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and even though it's like 4.5 hours, it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
You just watch it and you get so into it, and you're wondering what's next, and what each decade, what movie you're going to cover, and who you're going to talk to next, and it just keeps your interest till the very end. And I cannot wait to see what part 2 holds for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, we're again just continuing the whole vibe of what we did with the first one. It's over 100 movies, over 60 interview subjects, people that we have on that are talking about all the different films that we do going decade by decade. And then we break it up into different segments, talking about things like horror video games that came out in the 80s, talking about Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and a handful of other ones. We've got movies that we didn't cover in the first one, mainly focusing on the ones that were coming out in the States, like the really big, most popular heavy hitters.
Yeah.
We've gone further into part 2 to look at international, to look at Italian, to look at Japanese horror. And that's some of my favorite stuff too, because I love collecting and watching horror movies from around the world, because it's awesome to see, what was working for the States and then counter that with what was going on in Japan and then what was going on in Europe. And it's wild, just to see all the differences and things like that. But then being able to talk to people who are actually making those movies, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's something I'm going to be looking forward to, because I have not seen so many Italian or Japanese horror films. I'm stick, basically to the 80s American ones. So like you've already opened me up to like the Italian horrors with demons, and so I'm looking forward to seeing all those and what movies come out of that I make a list that I go and hunt down and try to find to watch myself. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That's what it's all about. Just have the notebook and pen out and just writing down whatever you want to see that you haven't checked out yet. Because, even with the handful of spoilers that we sometimes show in the different segments, we're still not showing you the entire film. So you're going to be able to check out the actual movie and go through the journey of just enjoying the ride. And then, you'll have a little bit of an advantage from someone just telling you, oh, this was a great one, because it might be the director telling you, hey, here's what was going on when we made this, and here was the response when it came out, and it was just craziness. And then you'll be able to go into it and be like, okay, I know a little bit about what's going on, but this is just totally blowing me away, like Blood Diner or The Being. Those movies are just crazy, but it's so much fun to hear the director come in and have her talk about making the films and what she was going through and what her thoughts were with the controversies and the gore effects and the pacing and the writing and all of that stuff. It's just, all part of it.
It just makes me I'm ready for this documentary. I just really, really want to watch this. It sounds so intriguing, so interesting to hear, all these different perspectives from all these different people, and movies like you mentioned those 2 movies. I had never heard of those movies ever until you brought them
those
up
are deep cut ones earlier. That we had a blast getting involved.
So right there, that's something that will be very interesting to hear and to see how people respond to that. People that maybe didn't know, like me, and so back to your Discord a little bit. Explain to people how your community is growing in the Discord.
Yeah, so basically everyone who gets a copy of In Search of Darkness 2 is going to get a year-long access pass to our Discord that basically every 2 weeks we do a watch party, but in between we're always having conversations about movies. We're always sharing stuff with each other. We're always talking trivia. We're always sharing our collections, and it's totally like an open forum discussion, constant, hangout that we've got going on for everyone who's a part of the In Search of Darkness family. So if you order a copy of the film and you join us, you're joining one of the best 80s horror communities out there, hands down. And the best thing that we have going on are, the abilities for people to actually get to meet their idols and celebrities who are parts of these films. And we schedule these great watch parties and Q&As that we have people coming in, like Jeffrey Combs talking about Reanimator, and we have, even like a memory just talking about what we were chatting about, seeing people like smile and laugh about making the movies and having fun, remembering what they were doing. One of my favorite memories of a watch party that we did this year was director Bill Lustig coming in and talking about Maniac Cop. And what was so great was he held up the mold of Robert Zadar's head during the watch party on camera and was just talking about how he still has that head cast from when they made the movie. And it's stuff like that that's just so awesome. Cool. Yeah, we had Kevin Van Henschenrick coming in talking about Basket Case, and he had just an amazing time hanging out with us for the half-hour Q&A and then the full length of the movie. Because after the Q&A, we just all press play together on the film, and we have an open discussion where a handful of us are just chatting and sharing trivia and sharing behind the scenes info and our own perspectives and talking about the different scenes. And everyone in the chat's just hanging out doing the same thing. It's all, it's all in the group, and we're all just having a good time.
Yeah. And that's like I said, for the fans, by the fans. It's a great community. What you guys do is just, I don't know, it just brings something out of you, and you get to talk about all these movies that you've seen with people that, and you get to see different perspectives from them and yourselves as well. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're always, everyone's learning something new, like every time we talk about a different movie. I mean, no one knows everything, but that's the whole, appeal of it too, is that when we have people coming on who've directed these films or wrote these movies or starred in these movies, they're telling stories that some of us have never even heard before. And they're debunking rumors that you see on like the IMDb trivia section and stuff like that completely aren't true. And they're saying, no, that's not how it happened. This is what really went down. And, cool. Again, talking about Maniac Cop, it was so much fun to hear his actual stories when Bill was telling us, no, we weren't getting arrested by the New York PD. We were filming them, and some of them were drinking on the job for the St. Patty's Day parade. And they were like, all right, well, just don't cause any trouble. And, some of those other trivia moments and things like that, just being able to hear what, again, Jeffrey Combs had to say about working with the great Stuart Gordon and making Reanimator. Like, I love that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have loved
so much fun.
I would have loved to have been on with Jeffrey Combs because I absolutely love him. And, speaking of which, From Beyond, I had never seen and after I watched the first one, I actually went out and I bought the Scream Factory Blu-ray of it. Yeah. And man, I absolutely loved that movie. I mean, Jeffrey Combs in that movie and Barbara Crampton. Man, Barbara Crampton's performance was mind-blowing to me. I thought she did a great job. It was just like, wow, it's so good.
Yeah, the reason that I'm looking around, I'm actually looking for my copy right now.
I know, mine's right there.
Yeah, I absolutely love From Beyond. Like, it is one of my all-time favorites. And, that's one that we're looking at scheduling. We're looking at getting someone from the film, and we'll be announcing that. And, it's just, again, talking about the movies that we love and sharing them with people who might have never seen them before. And you finally watch it, and it's like, this is one of the best movies ever.
I had seen Reanimator. And I absolutely love those. And, Stuart Gordon, it did a fantastic, amazing job on that film. Oh, yeah. And to see,
it was awesome.
It was awesome. And I watched the, From Beyond, and I saw, I liked learning that he wanted to make it more serious. He didn't want it to be like a dark comedy like Reanimator was. So he was like very serious in how Barbara said that her and Jeffrey had a little bit of a, like they had a good relationship, but they were kind of at odds with each each other in that film.
Conflicting a little bit.
Yeah,
And,
because she's the mad scientist. She's like the one that's in charge, and he's the one that's more docile. And Jeffrey Combs usually doesn't play like that. Like, oh man, it just was so good. It worked out so well in that. I loved it.
I'm not going to say what the plan is for that one because I don't want to give it away, but for anyone who gets a copy of In Search of Darkness 2 and follows along with us on social media and gets immediate access to all of our news and updates and releases and our Discord exclusives, when we drop the news about From Beyond, I know a lot of fans are going to be excited because we're going to hear about those stories. It's going to be a great time. And, that's what we're doing with all of the films that we've got planned for the next year. We're just bringing in the best people who are part of the movies and showing fans that we care about it just as much as they do, because that's totally what it's all about. We're right there with everybody, just having a good time and enjoying it.
So that's going to be something I'm going to hear about From Beyond, because that definitely is one of my new favorite movies. Truly. I mean,
Ken Foree in that film, I mean, he's so great, making the biscuits and gravy and it's so good. The stew with the biscuits on top and then his death scene and without spoiling it, Sorry, everyone who's listening and who might not have seen it, but even with that, you're still in for something you won't expect. Yeah, it's such a great movie.
It is, and it's just like. It blew my mind, and I cannot believe I had never seen that one before, especially after seeing Reanimator films. It was good. I give you guys credit for that one, because when you brought that up in the first movie, definitely got me to wanting to get that.
Well, that was my whole thing, like getting into entertainment and becoming a producer and working on these films and, actually caring about the genre, because I grew up loving it. And, I was a kid who was watching horror movies in the middle of the night, just sneaking like the TV on with my headphones plugged into those huge old boxy tube TVs and stuff, where you had to like click 1 through 13 and slide the dial and all that stuff. I was like even watching late night Cinemax and, seeing crazy stuff from the 80s and 90s and all that. But getting to the point where I could write about it and then actually produce documentaries like these, where all of these films that I grew up loving and I still do can be collected into one huge, almost encyclopedia-like marathon doc. That was like a huge thing that it's just amazing to see the response for it and to see how people are watching In Search of Darkness and getting ready for In Search of Darkness Part 2 and ready to like bust out the pen and paper and be like, oh man, I can't wait to write down like 20-50 movies I've never seen before and ones I've got to revisit, and it's great.
Like after the first one, I bought From Beyond, I bought Night of the Comet, I bought I bought Night of the Demons, because I had never seen those three. Well, I had watched Night of the Demons. I don't remember if I watched it before the documentary or after the documentary, but it was very recently. But I bought all three of those mainly because of the documentary.
No, that's cool, man.
So, and I absolutely loved all three. And, you guys are covering Night of the Comet in the new one, right?
Yeah, well, Night of the Comet is one that we've talked about, and we've had Kelly Maroney on. And we did a great watch party with her where she was with us talking about making the film, and she joined us for the entire movie. So she basically gave us all of her insights, all of her memories from making the film. And it was just so much fun to, hear her stories. And that's the thing too, is, we're looking at having her back around for another Discord watch party. And maybe, we'll look at possibly Chopping Mall. That's one of the ones that we're thinking about.
I'd love to do that, because I love Chopping Mall, and I would love to talk to Kelly Maroney. Absolutely love to. That movie is just like, it took me by surprise when I first saw that, because it's so good. Go on.
It's just crazy. And, talking with her, that's the whole thing that we're doing, because when we start the Q&A and we have the discussion going, we talk a little bit, let our celebrity guests do their intro and, basically say hi to everyone and talk about whatever they want to talk about to get things going. And then we go straight to the community, and the entire group gets to put in their questions that we go through and we ask directly. So we want to, continue doing that, where we're going through questions that everyone wants to ask someone like Kelly Maroney directly, and then she'll be able to answer, and we shout out whoever's asking the question. And, that's a huge part of it. And that's what I love doing too, is like, I go to horror conventions and I go to panels and stuff like that, and I'll jump up behind the microphone and I'll ask somebody a question. And, I love getting the fulfillment out of that for sure. But yeah, we would absolutely love to have you on, when we're looking at doing Chopping Mall at some point. So that'll be one that, as of right now, it's up in the air, but we'll get to it eventually. That's the plan,
And that one was a hard one to find to buy on Blu-ray, but I got that. I got my copy of Blu-ray because I had to own a hard copy of that, because that's what I do.
So good.
It is so good. I like your wall of movies back there. All mine are over here. I have to collect them because streaming's fine. I love Shudder. Don't get me wrong, because I've seen so many horror movies on there. It's like your guys' documentary, Shameless Blood. But I'd love to have a physical copy of a film. And so so that's one of the reasons I love your documentaries, because it helps me with my collection.
Well, that's the thing too, is like, that's what we're offering with the sale going on right now. From now until October 31st, we are selling bundles that you can get, and that includes the physical copy, whether you want it on DVD or Blu-ray. It includes a digital version that you'll be able to directly download. But, right now, you're not going to see this on Shudder. You're not going to see it show up on Amazon Video. And it's going to be very exclusive, because we want to deliver this directly to the fans. That's the entire point of us doing this campaign, where we are setting this so as soon as you order and we give you the confirmation and we deliver it to you in mid-November, you've got that digital copy, and then that physical copy comes your way, and you never have to worry about it showing up on a streaming service or expiring on Shudder or, disappearing off of Amazon Video or anything like that ever. You've got that copy right there, along with the posters, along with the pin, along with the inserts and the cover. And, we love the fact that we're able to offer this kind of awesome bundle that has so much in it. And our posters, I got to give credit to...
you guys have amazing posters.
Clayton Benge for our main poster that has the two pillars, the making number 2 Roman numerals with, again, Angela and so many other figures from 80s horror. And then the Dave Morrell poster, which we're looking at with the background here. Hills Have Eye, Demons, Shocker. I mean, this poster is just... And the thing is, too, talking about the Comet, our figure who's reaching out to the fans, reaching out to the viewer, is wearing that Rebels shirt that Kelly Maroney is wearing in the film. So, that's an awesome, nod that we got included. And then the third poster, which is just too cool, is done by an artist, Ratchet Loft, which is that everyone hanging out in front of the TV and the wall of posters and the 3 masks from Halloween 3 and the cube from the Lament configuration from Hellraiser on the floor next to the skateboard. And it's like we had some of the best artists come together to make these posters for this release. And I love them. Like, even, putting them on my wall, like, I'm going to just have a blast looking at them, because in that A2 size, they look awesome. They are so cool blown up, and they just look,
I know, I'm gonna
really, really great.
It's
find some wall space.
Some wall space, because I got, like, I know you can't see it, but I have, like, my whole movie shelves are right here. And then I got
I love that Evil Dead.
My Evil Dead, man. I had to have that right there. Yep, that's one of my all-time favorites. The Evil Dead franchise, my Halloween shirt.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh man.
I love that.
Well, that's the thing too, is like, again, the pedigree of people that we have in Search of Darkness too. There's something that, we're going to be unveiling here later on with an awesome video, but talking about Halloween, talking about Hellraiser, talking about Freddy, talking about Jason.
Yes.
There has never been a documentary or a film where all four have been in the same movie.
That's
So
awesome.
that's huge that we have, Robert Englund, that we have Kane Hodder, that we have
Yes.
Nick Castle, that we've got, the man himself, Doug Bradley, Pinhead. Like, it's something that, as a hardcore horror fan, I
Yes.
love that we've been able to bring this together.
I know, just to know that these four people are in one movie, it's just
Yeah.
amazing. Because as much as I love Freddy versus Jason, because I
Yeah.
really do love that movie, I would really have loved to seen Kane Hodder go against Robert Englund as Freddy, because Kane Hodder was the best Jason.
I am telling you, man, that was like, I would love to see that too. If there's any way to get those guys back together, just to make that happen,
Yes.
that would be so cool. Big time.
Here's a question for you: what franchise would you make a prequel to if you could?
Oh man, if I could make a prequel to any franchise, that is tough, because I think about the franchises as they are, and I don't want to mess with them, because I love the Nightmare on Elm Street films, and I wouldn't want a prequel focusing on Freddy. I love the Jason movies, and a prequel to Friday the 13th. I mean, we've got that in the first one, and we get flashbacks to that throughout the series about what went down with Jason. True. Talking about what we're discussing, and it's the same thing with Halloween. We always flash back on Michael as a kid, but with Hellraiser, I'll say this: I love some of the Hellraiser stories that have come out since the original film by Clive Barker, and then Hellraiser 2 Hellbound, and then Hellraiser 3, and there have been some really awesome side stories involving Kirsty, eventually tracking down Pinhead and the box. It would be interesting, I think, to see something about maybe Leviathan, or maybe the origin of the boxes, or maybe something that was going on even before, like Hellraiser 4 and stuff like that. Like something kind of, I don't know. This is a really tough one, because I love even like Phantasm. You've got like flashback origin stories in Oblivion. So maybe that too. Yeah. There's a ton that I could like write fan fiction about, but prequels and stories that happened before the first movie, that's a really tough one to pin down. But I would say, maybe Phantasm or Hellraiser. I think there's something there that could be really fun.
Yeah, that would I agree with you.
A Leviathan story, totally about the labyrinth, totally about like the engineer. There could be something there really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, like I really don't want to see a prequel to like these movies, but Freddy, I always thought could maybe lend itself a little bit to a prequel, to see him as the Springwood slasher before he, like a really dark detective, gritty, like 70s type.
Yeah,
but
that could be cool.
It could be cool, but then again, you don't want to, like you said, you don't really mess with it, because I mean, it'd be so cool, like see Nancy's dad, sort of like Clint Eastwood-esque hunting.
Oh, man, John Saxon.
I know.
One of the best. Yeah, miss him. Would have loved to have gotten a chance to chat with him. He was just one of the greats by far.
He was so good. And it could have been interesting. But like you said, I think Hellraiser, Phantasm definitely lends themselves to maybe more prequel-esque material than.
And maybe even Evil Dead too, the origin of the Necronomicon, and
that would be cool.
Some crazy stuff there. I know they explored it in Ash versus Evil Dead, and they even had a little bit of it through, some flashbacks and Army of Darkness. But, I think with the right ideas and the right team, any good story is doable. And, it has to be from a place of love and imagination and real sincere effort is like my thinking, you know.
Right.
So yeah, and even like deeper cut stuff like Witchboard and again Night of the Demons, you know, you
Yeah.
could totally have a story about the Hull House and what was
Definitely,
going
definitely.
on, how it was, you know, originally a functioning funeral home and a mortuary, and then all of a sudden we get the evil presence and what wound up in the mirror and what came out of the crematorium. And I mean, there's a ton of stuff. Even, you
So
know, Return of the Living Dead as well. There's so many. So it's endless, but it all comes down to a good story.
exactly. That's true.
Yeah.
And maybe not so much a prequel, but as having just seen Demons, I kind of want to see the movie they were watching.
Oh yeah, with
You
Michele
know,
Soavi and the film
yeah,
within the film.
the
That's
film
one of my
within the
favorite
film.
tropes all the time. Is
I
like
know.
whenever you got a group of people watching a movie in the movie. I love
Yeah,
that stuff. Yeah, and
right.
Demoni, you know, it's awesome. But you're totally right. Like the Michele Soavi and the rest of the cast uncovering the whole Galileo script and the original mask,
Yes.
and then turning into demons themselves after just having a night out, like riding their bikes around Rome. There's so much cool mythology going on there. And again, talking
Exactly.
about In Search of Darkness Part 2, hearing Jaretta explain all of that stuff because she was there through all of it with the entire team of like Lamberto Bava and Dario Argento and everyone who was coming up with the story and coming up with the ideas and the mythology. Like her discussion about Demoni is absolutely one of my favorite parts in the whole documentary, where I have a million favorite parts. So, you know, it's great. It's too
That's what's
cool.
so good about your, like, you know, I've said it many times. That's what's so good about the documentaries is there's so many things you can point to say that's my favorite part. No, that's my favorite part because it's all just so good and it's so great. And like I said, I think that movie was, I was interested in that movie. What, you know, that they were watching, and I kind of wanted to see that play out as well. And it's
Yeah.
just that'd be pretty neat idea. I mean, if done right.
Let me correct myself. I think I said Galileo and I meant Nostradamus, but
Yes,
regardless,
Nostradamus.
you know,
Nostradamus.
that's the fun of it too, is like they go into some wild territory with that one.
Yeah,
And that's what I love about being able to explore more deep cuts from Italian horror and international horror, because some of the ideas that people were having coming out of Asia and Europe were far beyond like some of the stuff that we were thinking about in the States. Because again, it's a totally different culture. So when you're looking at guys like Lucio Fulci and Dario Argento making their own movies and looking at different things like witchcraft and really rich, long standing history, and you know, all of their different influences, it's complete night and day compared to what we were doing over here. But in the end, everyone's just having a great time. Everyone's making an entertaining movie, and we're all celebrating horror and crazy stories and gore and just fun.
right. I am looking forward to hearing about this, like, because like I mentioned earlier, you know, I don't know much about the you know, the foreign Italian, like, because like Demons was my very first Italian horror film,
Oh, that's
and I loved
awesome.
it. I
I'll tell
loved
you,
it.
that is a great way to start. Like, for sure. That is an awesome place to get into it, because it only gets better from there. And the stories only get crazier. And some are dark and some are like haunted house movies, but some are wild and high energy and full of hard rock and heavy metal and Iron Maiden and Lemmy and, you know, insane kills and all this stuff. So yeah, I love being able to chat about those kinds of movies and those kinds of subgenres. And you know, when you go down that rabbit hole, it's like a whole new world being opened up into 80s horror and just, you know, what we're all into.
Exactly, and you know, not to discount other horror movies because you know, I love the horror from the '90s and maybe not so much the 2000s, but uh, 80s
Sure.
horror.
Yeah.
80s horror is probably the best decade of horror. Period. Plain and simple. There's just so many. Like you can name classic after classic after classic, and even like ones that like you talked about earlier that I never heard, but that some of us probably have heard of and nobody else heard of that you can name. So it's just so good.
Yeah. And it all comes down to, just what these people were doing when they were making these films. Like some of them were really made from the heart. A lot of them were sincere in that they were just trying to tell crazy stories and get people entertained. And there was the whole drive-in aspect. There was the crazy like B movie and, really like limited release stuff that,
Yeah,
was being made between New York and LA and in the middle of the country. And I love like the obscure stuff just as much as I love the mainstream
yeah,
stuff,
yes.
So there's so much to be had in the decade. And again, that's, what we're doing is we're going through each year and discussing as much as we can while keeping it into a 4.5 hour long feature and then keeping the conversation going.
Yeah.
So that's where, it all comes into documentary, community, and then us just coming together and having good times with events and watch parties and stuff like that.
Watching good old classic 80s horror. I mean,
That's it, man.
so
Yeah.
many people love so many people love 80s horror. Like sometimes it even surprises me, like people that you would think loves 80s horror. Just
Yeah.
love horror. Like
Totally.
it's just like boggles your mind sometimes, and then you can bond with somebody over that, and it's just so good. And speaking of more mainstream,
Yeah.
can you give us any details on John Carpenter's stuff that's going to be focused?
Yeah, so John Carpenter actually has more discussion in this one about some of the deeper cut stuff too. So he's chiming in on some of the subgenres and some of the films that we are covering this time around that we didn't want to feature in the first one. But as for the exact specifics, there are some things that I want to leave for fans and everyone who wants to get into it as a surprise. We want it to be you're diving into this with expectations of going further into the discussion of 80s horror, but we don't want to give everything away because we've got so much fun stuff for everyone to get in on and enjoy. But yeah, he talks about some really cool movies that, I've talked about a couple of them in the discussion so far with you. So once you, once you get a chance to see what he's getting into, it's really cool just to see him brighten up about some of these movies that were made, over in Europe and some of the ones that are a little bit more obscure on the video store shelf. Yeah.
I love John Carpenter, man. Legend. Legend. And just his films are timeless and classic. And like I was talking with Tom from Midnight's Edge. We did a stream. We did a
Midnight's Edge guys are great.
Yeah,
they were just on with us for Running Man. Yeah.
And
on our sci-fi side.
Yeah. And he says something. He said that a John Carpenter film is something where he done it where it's something new, but it's something you've seen before. Like just because he was such a fan of movies, like with the fight scene in They Live, he liked the old Western fight scene. I can't remember of the guys that Tom brought up, but he loved that fight scene, so he wanted to do a longer fight scene, which was inspired by that fight scene They Live. So that's so cool. It is true. Totally. It is true.
Yeah, I mean, I love John Carpenter's stuff when he's riffing on old Western tropes like Rio Bravo and stuff, and what he did with Assault on Precinct 13. But, of course, I mean, everybody loves The Thing, who's a hardcore horror fan. The Thing is like one of the greatest films of all time. Mm-hmm. And, his discussion about that in the first one was just so fantastic. And even going into some of his more obscure movies, like, I'll say right now, I love Prince of Darkness. That is one of my all-time favorite John Carpenters. I would say I'd even put it into like top 5, top 3 sometimes. Yeah. And I grew up with like Big Trouble in Little China. I grew up with Starman and Christine. I mean, he's had an amazing career as a director and as a writer. And he's someone I definitely look up to as an incredible creative. But there was something about Prince of Darkness that was just, I don't know, really, really connecting for me. The tone, the look of the film, the cast, the ensemble. I mean, Peter Jason in there running around doing
Yeah.
that like trumpet horn thing while he's got handfuls of junk food.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. The soundtrack for that one is one of my favorite soundtracks. Lisa Blount doing her thing as the main lead, and then at the very end you see her in front of the church, and it's the transmission from the future. But it's so cool to be able to have people like John Carpenter and like Keith David in to talk about what they were doing and how they made these movies, and then talk about that great fight with Roddy Piper. Like, oh man, every time I think about They Live, it just makes me smile. That one,
I know, it's so good.
I love it. I love it.
Great film. Great film.
Totally. Gets better every year.
Every time. And I just watched it again recently, right before I did my Carpenter stream with Tom and them. It's just a great film. So, see, what else can we get into about these? What can I get out of you over this documentary?
Yeah. Well, I was going to talk a little bit too, discussing the community and talking about, how you think about horror and how some people still have that perception that, oh, it's only for a certain type of movie fan. But, that's not the case at all. We have people from around the world who are part of our horror family and our horror community and join us every other week for these watch parties and these events, and are part of the discussion through every week as we're doing events and we're bringing up trivia and we're sharing stuff and having fun. It's like, if you're into these movies, or if you're into even just one of them, you're part of the community, you're part of the family, you're part of the group that's always keeping the conversation going and always just looking to have a good time and talk about these. And, that's what we want to do, is we're all in this together. And we're all part of the In Search of Darkness whole group as a whole. And that matters to all of us. I mean, if you get a copy of the documentary and you join our community, you're right there with us. And it's a lot different than something like Twitter or Facebook or, a totally open group where nobody has any real stake or any real interest. Some people can come in and start trolling. Some can mess up forums or comment sections on, different sites under articles and stuff like that. Everyone is so cool coming together from wherever they are. You can be in Europe, you can be in Australia, you can be in the States on the West Coast or the East Coast or anywhere. And it's just, all of us being a part of the same thing, and we're all in it together, and it's great. I love it. It's the best community I've ever been a part of.
Exactly. I mean, the horror community, I don't think people
I love
really
that. Too cool, K-Log. I was born in the darkness. It's so great.
Boy.
Yeah. Throw up the horns.
I really don't think people realize that people that love horror movies in the horror community are actually just normal people. They're not like
we're just fans of good movies,
crazy people. I mean, if you just watch these movies, you realize that they're actually really good and they really put a lot of work into these, and there's very talented people in these movies. Just because it's horror doesn't mean it needs to be overlooked.
I mean, my God, in between doing Freddy movies, Robert Englund was doing Shakespeare. I mean, he's like a thespian, diehard, true and true. He would love to, be behind the camera doing some intense drama and some, really deep and provoking cinema. But at the same time, he knows the value of, putting on the makeup and donning the glove and being that character. And that's the same thing with Kane Hodder too. He talks about the value of being the bad guy and what it's like in his head, just putting on the mask and everything. And it's amazing because, we all come from our own individual stories, but we all join together and just celebrate the stuff that we love. And that's the thing too, is like, I've got a, Freddy Lovin' a Jason mask in my house, but that's so do so many other people that are a part of this community. And right now, we don't have the luxury of being able to go to conventions unless they're really limited, they're really safe, they're really, regulated. There are a few cons that are out there still active right now. And, it's amazing, but the ability to get together in person has been so limited now that being able to do this stuff virtually, where we can all just, tune in and get online together on a Sunday afternoon and have fun, it's the best thing that we've got right now. And we're all in for it. We just want everyone to have a good time.
Yeah. And it is just such a good time. And I'm looking forward to joining that community myself, the Discord here soon, because I'm part of your sci-fi In Search of Tomorrow. So, also, if you're fans
and more
of
stuff
80s,
to come on that one in February and March. We got some great stuff on the way.
Yeah, so if you guys are also fans of like 80s sci-fi films, they got another one coming out called In Search of Tomorrow, the definitive 80s sci-fi documentary. It's going to be just as good as their horror documentary. I guarantee it.
Oh, man. I'm telling you, like, since we did our last campaign, we've had some interviews added to that film. And we're talking, like, for sci-fi fans, absolutely on the level of, like, Freddy and Jason. Like, we have some iconic people from 80s sci-fi that I cannot wait to reveal. There are some things that we've got to wait until, we can deliver the great news. But when we do, it's going to blow some people away who we've got lined up for that one. But again, for this, we've got great interviews again, talking about some more people, like even Corey Taylor's come back for In Search of Darkness Part 2. And the thing is, it's just crazy how people from all different walks of life can be like hardcore horror fans. Yeah. And his story is amazing. He just grew up watching horror movies in the house with his mom working nights and doing his thing. And then he became one of the biggest rock stars in the world. Yeah. And horror has still always been a huge part of him at his core. Yeah. And we've also got Chris Jericho, who's come in. And he has the same story. He's like, I grew up loving horror movies, and that's always been a part of me. So to hear him talk about stuff like Cannibal Holocaust and like crazy censored movies and like video nasties and stuff like that, it's insane just to have Jericho in the mix talking about, horror is a big part of me, and I'm one of the, biggest wrestlers in the entire world. Yeah. And, we love hearing that stuff. Because again, it's what we're all into.
Definitely. And I remember, when I was a kid growing up, my older brother, he was the one that would watch like Freddy and Jason, and I'd be like 4 years old, and I'd be like peeking around the corner. I wouldn't watch,
peeking around the couch.
I wouldn't watch. And then, as I got older, I've probably seen a few I shouldn't have seen at such a young age, staying up late watching cable.
So, I have the exact same story. Like the very first horror movie I ever saw was Dream Warriors, and I was like 4 years old, and the babysitter had it on tape, and I watched, it was Patricia Arquette getting eaten by the Freddy worm, and it stuck with me until I grew up and I found out what that movie was. But yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, but like, man, I can't even remember the first one I saw.
Thank you, K-Log. If there's ever a chance, I'd be honored to. Joe Bob and Darcy rule.
yes, they do. Yes, they do. Man, I was probably Freddy, because my brother was a huge Freddy fan, and that was probably the first one. It was probably the first Freddy was the first one I think I could probably remember seeing. And, I love those movies. When I got like 12 or 13, around that age, we used to live by this video store in town. The small out of the way, not big chain. Don't get me wrong. I love
I miss those mom and pop shops so much. I'm right with you.
I used to do work for the lady that owned it, and she would let me just pick out any movie I want for free. And like,
that's awesome.
I would pick out horror movies and 80s sci-fi, everything. And I just I remember one day I just got all 7 or 6 Freddy's at the time. I think it was only the 6. I just picked all 6 Freddy's on VHS, took them home, and just just watched them. And it was so good. It was so good.
Oh, hell yeah.
She was so nice. And she would give me movie posters and free rentals because I would do stuff for her. It was just, it was a good time. And I remember that's, where I've seen some of the greatest movies was from that time.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that, we all have a memory of how we got into it. And, looking back on that stuff and reflecting on those good times, whether they were part of our formative years or whenever, I have the same stuff. Like, I look back and I had family that loved watching horror movies and introduced me to some great horror and sci-fi. And, you know, I think that's a huge part of the reason why I'm a lifelong fan, and that's always going to stick
Yeah.
with me. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just classic films that hold your interest that you can watch over and over and over again. And it never just gets old. It just never gets old.
Yeah, totally.
We've been on for about an hour. You ready to?
Yeah, we can wrap up. I think this has been a great time.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed being on. Everyone who's commented, thank you so much for watching. And this has been a total blast, Greg. This has been great.
Yeah, it's been fun. I enjoyed talking to you, Andrew. I gotta have you on again sometime.
Yeah, man, I'd love to. Anytime.
Yeah. To the chat, thank you, Flipped Out. Thank you, K-Log, my dude. Thank you, Snowdub, the Sentinel. Thank you all for hanging out and being with us and enjoying this great chat about horror movies. Because it's just, I don't know. Sometimes my words just get me. I don't know what they want to say, but I just want to know that horror movies are just great. Just great. I just love them.
Agree with you 100%.
I mean,
totally.
I know I got superheroes and stuff and all because that's what I started with first was Superman. And Superman, I credit Superman too for horror because he got me into like sci-fi, Star Wars, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, and then with that came like the horror with my brother because he's like, "Oh, so you like this movie, so let's watch this movie." So I credit superheroes for getting me into horror too.
So you like seeing some face melting in Indiana Jones? I'll show you some face melting in this other movie. Yeah,
exactly. So like it all lends itself to one another, and it's amazing. So
oh man, that's making me think of like Poltergeist and everything that Tobe Hooper, like what I got opened up to after being a fan of that growing up, just because I would watch every Amblin and Spielberg movie, and it's like. Some of those films are gateway movies, and 100% Poltergeist is one of those. But yeah, man, I'm right there with you. Horror is just awesome. That's what it comes down to. 100%.
I'm just a big genre fan in general, all around. It's the best genre because I don't know. It's just like it often seems like it's overlooked to me, and it's just if the people would really just look at these films. There's really great directing. There's really great acting. There's really great effects, and they're just really great.
Yeah, and great stories behind them too. That's why we're here. We're all about highlighting all that and celebrating it, and being a part of it. Yeah. All
right. Thank you once again, Andrew, for coming on and held to the chat. Thank you guys for being here. Very appreciative. In Search of Darkness Part 2 is available to pre-order now. Until October 31st. I got link in the chat for you guys. And once this posts fully tomorrow, I will put a link down in the description here. And I also got a little something coming for you later tonight, trailer wise for In Search of Darkness Part 2 for you guys for more information on it.
Hell yeah. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah. Get ready, guys. Get ready. It's coming. So, I just updated my StreamYard here. And as I close out, I want to see if I can play this because I've never got to play these little videos that you can add to this. So I'm gonna play this video. My intro will be my outro now as I close out.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
See if I can play.